You don't get what you want, you get what you tolerate. You get what you settle for. You get what you've been silently agreeing to every day with your habits, your thoughts, your routines, and your standards. See, life doesn't respond to what's on your vision board. Life responds to what you walk past without changing. Life responds to what you permit. You tolerate being late, and you'll keep being late. You tolerate laziness, poor eating, toxic people, weak goals, sloppy execution. Guess what? That's exactly what your life will reflect. It's not a mystery, it's a mirror. The day everything started to change for me was the day I looked in the mirror and said, I will no longer accept this version of me. That's when the tide turned. That's when the old story started to collapse. Not when I wrote down new goals, but when I raised my internal standard. Not when I read another book, but when I drew the line in the sand. Most people never do that. They let their feelings run the show. They say, I want to be successful, but then they tolerate the attitude of failure. They tolerate distractions. They tolerate drama. They tolerate procrastination like it's an old friend. And the scary part, over time, what you tolerate becomes what you believe you deserve. But let me remind you, you are not a tree. You don't have to stay stuck where you are. Don't wish it were easier, wish you were better. And to get better, my friend, you've got to raise your standard. If your standard is low, don't be surprised when results are low. If your standard is high, it demands more of you. And yes, that's uncomfortable. But that's where growth lives. Here's how it works. Let's say your goal is to get fit. Wishing won't do it. Having gym clothes won't do it. Posting about it won't do it. What will do it is when your standard changes from, I'll work out when I work out no matter what. That's the shift. You move from wanting to expecting, from hoping to demanding better from yourself. This applies to everything. Your money, your relationships, your discipline. If you keep tolerating excuses, you'll never see progress. Raise the standard. Stop negotiating with your lower self. Start expecting more, not from the world, but from you. Now here's the key. You don't raise your standard by shouting affirmations in the mirror. You raise it by backing it up with action, with small disciplines practiced daily. You clean the room even when no one's watching. You get up early even when you don't feel like it. You read the book instead of scrolling. You speak truth instead of staying comfortable. When you do these things, you tell the universe, I've raised the bar. Mediocrity is no longer welcome here. And sure, it won't be easy. You'll be tempted to slip back. But remember this, every time you act below your standard, you teach yourself that it's okay. Every time you act above it, you reinforce the identity of the person you're becoming. So decide right now. Draw the line. Say no more. No more tolerating the version of you that plays small. No more excuses. No more sleeping on your gifts. You may not control the outcome, but you always control the standard you bring to the table. Raise that standard and watch your life rise to meet it. Let's clear something up right now. Discipline is not punishment. It's not the villain of your story. It's not the enemy of freedom. It's not the end of joy. Discipline is self-respect in motion. It is the highest form of saying, I believe in me. You see, you don't become successful by chance. You become successful by standard. And it's built on the rock called discipline. Now, people often come up to me and say, Jim, I've got big dreams. I say, that's great, but where's your discipline? Because without it, dreams are nothing more than floating wishes. Wishes are for the hopeful, discipline is for the determined. That's the difference between the crowd and the few, the 97% and the 3%. Discipline separates the talkers from the builders, the drifters from the doers. You've heard me say it before. Discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment. And oh, how true that is. You can set all the goals you want. You can write them in gold ink, put them on your bathroom mirror, and chant them every morning. But if you don't have the discipline to act on them consistently, then they stay goals. They never become reality. Discipline means showing up after the emotion fades. You're fired up today. That's good. What about tomorrow when it rains? What about next week when motivation is gone and the only thing staring you in the face is the grind? That's when your standard has to kick in. And discipline, real, sturdy, non-negotiable discipline is what holds that standard in place. It's like a thermostat. You set your internal temperature at a high level, and discipline keeps it there. When the world gets cold, when circumstances drop, when excuses show up to whisper in your ear, discipline keeps your temperature from falling. It says, no, this is who I am. This is what I do. Discipline is waking up early when comfort begs you to sleep in. It's eating clean when temptation is all around. It's working the plan when no one's watching. It's reading the book, making the call, keeping your word, even when you don't feel like it. Because that's the difference. The average operate by feelings, the excellent operate by standards. And when your standard is to show up daily, no matter how you feel, you become unstoppable. It means you're principled. It means you've chosen to lead yourself, because let's face it, no one is coming to force you to grow. No one is going to drag you to your destiny. You've got to earn it. You've got to show the universe you're serious, and nothing screams seriousness like a life rooted in discipline. It's not glamorous, it's not always exciting, but it's always powerful. And the payoff? Oh, the payoff is rich. You become a person others can count on. You start seeing results compound. You build a reputation, not just with others, but with yourself. Because every time you keep a promise to yourself, you add a brick to the foundation of your character. And that's how a life of excellence is built. Not overnight, but every day, brick by brick. The best part, discipline is a muscle. You can strengthen it. You don't have to be born with it. You just have to begin. Start small, but start today. Choose one thing and commit to it. Do it when it's easy. Do it when it's hard. And before long, it won't be a chore. It'll be your identity. So let's make the decision. Let's raise the bar. Let's set the standard. Say to yourself, from this day forward, I will live with discipline. I will respect myself enough to follow through. Because when discipline becomes your default, success becomes your shadow. If you want to know what kind of life you're building, don't start with your goals, start with your environment. Want a quick snapshot of your standards? Look around. Your room, your desk, your closet, your calendar, your conversations, they're all mirrors. They don't lie. They reflect not what you say you want, but what you've settled for. See, the world you live in is not just a result of your circumstances, it's a result of your standards. And the day you raise your standards, your environment has two choices. It either rises with you or it gets left behind. And believe me, it's perfectly fine to leave a few things behind. Now, I always say everything affects everything, and nowhere is that more true than your environment. You can't plant the seeds of greatness in a field full of weeds. You can't build a palace on sinking sand. You can't grow a strong mind in a toxic atmosphere. And you certainly can't live a high-standard life surrounded by low-standard people. Look at your friends. Are they challenging you or enabling you? Are they holding you accountable or helping you stay comfortable? Because comfort can be a killer. It wraps itself around you like a warm blanket, whispering, "You're fine right where you are." And if you're not careful, you'll wake up a decade later still wrapped in that same blanket, wondering where the time went. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. It's not just a clever saying, it's a formula. And if you change the inputs, you change the outcome. Raise the standard of the life you live. Find people who live on purpose, people who push you to be better, not pull you into nonsense, people who make growth normal and excellence expected. Now let's talk about your space, your physical environment. I've never met a millionaire with a cluttered, chaotic life. You won't find champions who live in disarray. Why? Because how you keep your space reflects how you govern your life. Sloppy surroundings point to sloppy standards. A disorganized environment reflects disorganized thinking. Order breeds clarity. Cleanliness invites focus. You walk into a well-kept space and your mind says, this is serious business. Your environment should be a stage set for success, not a trap set for mediocrity. Want more discipline in your life? Start by cleaning your desk. Want more clarity? Straighten your room. Want more motivation? Surround yourself with things that inspire, not distract. And routines. Don't even get me started. If your daily routine is random and reactive, don't be surprised if your results are too. Your schedule tells the truth about your priorities. If it's full of junk, it means you're tolerating junk. If it's filled with purpose-driven action, that means your standard is rising. You want a different life? Change what you do between 6 and 9 in the morning. Change how you end your day. Because success doesn't just show up, it's scheduled. And here's the beautiful part. When you raise your standard, your environment has no choice but to shift. You start pruning relationships. You start adding more books and subtracting more distractions. You start honoring your time and demanding the same from others. And slowly, but surely, your world changes. Not because someone gave you a better life, but because you demanded one from yourself. Remember, success is not something you chase, it's something you attract by the person you become. And the person you become is shaped by what you allow into your world. Raise your standard and your environment will either rise to meet you or fall away. Either way, you win. So don't just hope for a better life. Build an environment that makes one inevitable. Let me tell you something that changed my life forever. The day I stopped negotiating with my weaknesses. You know what I mean? Those little internal whispers that say, just this once won't hurt. Or, I'll start tomorrow. That voice, the one that makes excuses, delays progress, and welcomes comfort, is not your friend. It's your enemy dressed in familiar clothing. And if you let it run your life, your standards will stay on the ground while your dreams stay in the clouds. You see, every time you let yourself off the hook, every time you compromise, just this once, you reinforce the habits that keep you average. And average is not where growth lives. Mediocrity is not where wealth is built. Excellence doesn't show up for the man or woman who always takes the easy way out. The truth is, the standard you hold in the smallest of moments is the standard you live by in the biggest areas of your life. There are only two pains in life, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. One weighs ounces, the other weighs tons. Discipline is painful, yes, but it's the kind of pain that builds strength, that forges character, that makes your life worth living. Regret, on the other hand, is the pain that leaves you wondering, what if? It's the pain that comes when you know you could have done more, but chose comfort instead. That's the price of negotiating with your weakness. Now here's the secret. High standards don't live in grand declarations. They live in your daily choices. They live in the moment you feel tired but get up anyway, in the moment you want to quit but push through anyway, in the moment that dessert calls your name but you remember your health goals, in the moment when wasting an hour on nonsense is easy but you choose to read, to study, to build instead. That's where a successful life is shaped, one small defiant decision at a time. When you stop giving yourself an out, your life gets in order. When you stop tolerating weakness, your strength begins to emerge. Raise the threshold. Don't entertain the voice that says, skip the gym, you've had a long day. Don't welcome the one that says, you've worked hard enough, you deserve a break. That voice is building your regret while convincing you it's being kind. But success doesn't come from kindness to your weakness. It comes from kindness to your future. Let your standard be discipline, not occasionally, not when it's convenient, but every single time. Make it automatic. Because when you always choose discipline over excuse, you no longer need motivation. You've built a system, a standard, a code of conduct for your own life. That's when your results change. That's when your income changes. That's when your mindset, your relationships, your health, all of it transforms. And remember, the world will only rise to meet you at the level you demand of yourself. Not what you wish for, not what you say you want, but what you tolerate, what you accept, and what you choose to become. Stop negotiating with your weakness. Start demanding more. And everything in your life will rise to meet the higher standard. Let's be crystal clear. Average is the enemy of wealth. It's the silent agreement to stay beneath your potential. It's a quiet decision made every day to settle for just enough, to do the minimum, to go through the motion. while telling yourself, at least I'm showing up. But showing up without rising up is not progress. It's stagnation with a smile on its face. Average is a form of self-betrayal. It's when your mind knows what you're capable of, but your actions say, this is good enough. But let me tell you, good enough is never good enough when your destiny demands greatness. There is no wealth in half-hearted effort. There is no growth in comfort zones. There is no reward for mediocrity. If you're only doing what's expected, you've already capped your return. Now, don't confuse average with being broke or being behind. It has nothing to do with your current bank account and everything to do with your mindset. Average is when you stop pushing yourself. When you stop asking, how can I do this better? And instead start saying, at least I'm trying. That's the language of a man on his way to nowhere. You must raise your standard to operate with excellence, even when no one is watching. That's the real test. Success is not built in public moments, it's built in private discipline, when you choose to master your craft when nobody applauds. When you give your best effort on the task that no one sees. When you're cleaning the kitchen, doing the assignment, hitting the gym, planning your day, not because someone's watching, but because excellence is who you are now. If you ever want to rise above the crowd, you must stop thinking like the crowd. The average man clocks in and clocks out, content with surviving the day, but the man who builds wealth shows up early, stays a little longer, gives a little more, and demands more from himself than anyone else ever could. He doesn't wait to be pushed, he pulls himself forward. That's the difference. Wealth doesn't show up for people who do just enough. Wealth shows up for those who do more than expected, more than required, more than anyone else is willing to do. Wealth is a reward, it's not a right. And that reward is only given to those who have made excellence their standard, not their occasional act. So the question is simple. Are you satisfied with average, or are you ready to chase something greater? Because you can't do both. You can't want to live above while acting like those who settle below. You must decide that average is not your name, not your story, not your future. Let others be average. Let them do just enough, but not you. You were designed to rise, not to float. And the moment you decide that anything less than your best is unacceptable, that's the moment the world begins to shift in your favor. That's the day your results start compounding. And that's the standard that leads to wealth, to greatness, to a life that reflects your full potential. Don't just show up, show out. Make excellence your floor, not your ceiling. Let's talk about doing it right, especially when it's hard. That's where the separation happens. That's where the crowd thins out. See, anybody can be excellent when it's convenient. Anybody can show discipline when the sun is shining, the energy is high, and everything's going their way. But the ones who make it, the ones who rise to wealth, to success, to greatness, those are the ones who do it right. When it's not convenient, when it's tough, when it's frustrating, when nobody's watching and no applause is coming. High standards aren't about mood, they're about principle. Mood is what you feel, principle is what you live by. If you only act based on how you feel, your life will swing like a pendulum, high one day, low the next. But if you act based on principle, you anchor yourself. You stay steady in the storm. You stay consistent when most people retreat. Now let me give you the truth about success. It's not built on big flashy moves. It's not about motivation once a week or dramatic spurts of effort. No. Success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day, every single day. That's it. The problem is most people do what's easy, not what's necessary. Most people lower the standard the moment it gets uncomfortable. But the secret is, wealth doesn't arrive when you feel like doing the work. It arrives when you do the work regardless of how you feel. Let consistency become your minimum, not your goal. Your baseline. Make your baseline excellence. If you say you're going to work out 4 times a week, then do it, even if it's raining, even if you're tired, even if nobody else shows up. If you say you're going to wake up at 5 a.m. to plan your day or build your business, then do it, even if your body wants to hit snooze. Because every time you follow through when it's hard, you're telling yourself, this is who I am now. And that identity, that inner standard, is where all transformation begins. The wealthy don't rise because they're lucky or because they have some secret. They rise because they demand more from themselves when others would quit. They show up and get it done, not just when it's easy, but when it's heavy. And that consistency creates momentum. Momentum creates mastery, and mastery brings the rewards. Look around. Excellence is rare. You don't see it everywhere. You don't hear about it often. You don't bump into it walking down the street. You become it by decision, and then you protect that decision through daily, consistent, disciplined action. That's the formula. It's not magic, it's mindset. It's not luck. It's standard. So from now on, don't let your performance be dictated by how you feel. Let it be dictated by the commitment you made to yourself. Let it be measured by the standard you chose to live by. When it's hard, show up harder. When it's painful, tighten your focus. When it's uncertain, stand firmer on your principles. That's how you separate from the masses. Raise your standards so high that doing it right becomes your reflex, not your reach. That's when the world starts to respond. That's when the results begin to chase you. And that's when success, real, lasting, fulfilling success, becomes your way of life. You can't build a palace with the blueprint of a shadow. If your identity doesn't match your new standard, you'll always find a way to shrink back to the level of your old thinking. See, you can't behave like wealth if you think like lack. You can't step into success while dragging the mindset of mediocrity behind you. So if you're serious about raising your standard, you've got to raise your identity first. Because here's the truth. Your life will never exceed your self-concept. You will never out-earn, outgrow, or outperform the identity you've settled for. Identity is powerful. It drives everything, your habits, your choices, your expectations. And if your identity is rooted in limitation, you'll keep producing results that match it. You might get a glimpse of success, but without a shift in identity, you'll sabotage it. You'll find a way to lose it, delay it, or disqualify yourself from it. Why? Because the mind always returns to the level it believes it deserves. Now, here's where transformation begins. You must become the kind of person who lives at the level you desire. That means upgrading what you consume, mentally, emotionally, relationally. Start with the conversations you allow. Are you surrounded by people who reinforce weakness, excuses, and limitations, or do you engage with people who challenge you, elevate you, and expect more from you? Your circle is either shaping a powerful identity or weakening it. Choose wisely. Then look at what you're reading. What you feed your mind determines how you think, and how you think determines how you live. Don't waste your mental diet on junk. Fill it with wisdom, challenge, strategy, and inspiration. Read to stretch your imagination, to ignite your ambition, to build your discipline. Every page you turn is a silent mentor, pushing your standard higher. And most of all, set goals that force a new identity to emerge. Don't just set goals that match your current self. Set goals that demand a new version of you to show up. That's how you change. That's how you grow. When the goal is big enough, you'll be forced to drop the habits, the excuses, and the laziness that no longer serve you. Your old self has to die for your new standard to live. Now, let me tell you something. What you become in the pursuit of a higher standard is far more valuable than what you get. Yes, the money, the freedom, the recognition, those are wonderful rewards. But the real treasure is the transformation of you. Because once you become that kind of person, you can never go back. You'll never again settle for less. You'll walk differently, think differently, speak differently. You'll carry a standard that shifts rooms and opens doors. And that kind of power, that kind of identity is something no one can take from you. So raise the standard, but raise the self first. Look in the mirror and declare a new identity. Say, I'm no longer available for small thinking, weak habits, or average results. I operate with excellence. I attract abundance. I live with integrity and purpose. And then back those words with consistent action and daily decisions that align with that new standard. That's how success is built. That's how wealth is attracted. Not just by effort, but by identity, by becoming someone who is capable, responsible, focused, and intentional. Because the major value in life isn't what you get, it's what you become. And when you become the kind of person who refuses to lower the standard, The world responds with opportunity, respect, and reward. You set the tone, not the world. That's the truth. And if you haven't claimed that responsibility yet, you're living reactive, not proactive. You're letting life dictate who you are instead of deciding who you're going to be. Now hear this. Your standard is your declaration. It tells the world how you operate, what you allow, and what you expect. And once you raise that standard, the world starts to adjust, not the other way around. Most people wait. They wait for the economy to improve, for the perfect moment, for someone to encourage them, for their friends to believe in them. They wait for the weather, for their mood, for their boss, for the government. And in all that waiting, they become victims of circumstance. That's not leadership. It's not power. That's surrender. See, if the world is cold, you be the fire. If people are lazy, you be the example of discipline. If the culture is loud with distraction, you become silent with focus. Don't let your standard shrink to fit the room. Let the room rise to match your standard. There's a principle I live by: set your own internal thermostat. What does that mean? It means you live by the temperature of others. You decide how you think, how you move, how you respond, regardless of what's happening out there. Most people are thermometers. They read the temperature of the environment and adjust to it. But successful people, they're thermostats. They set the temperature. They change the environment simply by showing up and refusing to lower the bar. You walk into a meeting and everyone's casual, unfocused, you stay sharp. You walk into a business where the energy's low, you bring the fire. You surround yourself with friends who tolerate average. You raise the heat with your goals, your discipline, your conversations. And guess what? Some will rise with you, some will step aside. But you don't stop, because your standard isn't up for negotiation. That's how leaders are born. Not when they're promoted, but when they decide to set the tone. And that tone must come from clarity, conviction, and consistency. When you make it your standard to be excellent, not occasionally, but habitually, you become magnetic. People notice, opportunities notice, doors open, not because you waited for permission, but because you acted with authority. And let me tell you something important. When your standard is strong, it becomes a filter. It filters your habits, your company, your choices. It repels weakness and attracts greatness. You stop entertaining gossip, laziness, excuses. You stop settling for people who drain your vision. You start building a world that matches your temperature, your pace, your energy, your fire. Now, don't expect applause for setting the tone. In fact, expect resistance. People will try to dim your light because it exposes their comfort. But don't shrink. Don't apologize for high standards. Don't dial it down just to blend in. Your job is not to be accepted, it's to be effective. And effectiveness comes when you live by design, not by default. Raising your standards means you've got to let go of comfort. Not because comfort is evil, but because comfort doesn't demand anything from you, and growth always does. You can't rise while staying in the same soft place. You can't evolve while hugging your excuses. Comfort will whisper, stay here, it's safe. But growth shouts, get up, move forward, become more. If your standard is to stay comfortable, your results will stay small. See, change is painful, but so is regret. And if you don't choose one, life will choose the other for you. You'll either feel the sting of sacrifice now or the bitterness of mediocrity later. But when you raise your standard, you start seeing comfort not as a reward, but as a trap. It's a place where ambition dies, where dreams go stale, where years vanish without return. If you don't raise your standard, comfort becomes your prison, one with soft cushions and invisible chains. Now, raising your standard means saying, if it doesn't grow me, I outgrow it. That means some people, some habits, some patterns, they've got to go. I've always believed that your life changes the moment you demand more from yourself than you've ever demanded before. And you can't demand more from yourself while holding on to things that keep you weak, distracted, and undisciplined. Let's get real. If it's comfort food that numbs your ambition, it's got to go. If it's friends who talk small, think small, and live small, you have to make some distance. If it's routines that keep you stagnant, you've got to break the pattern. Raise the bar so high that anything beneath it naturally falls away. Not because you're being arrogant, but because you've chosen growth as your standard. It's not easy. That's why most never do it. They prefer the certainty of today's comfort over the promise of tomorrow's greatness. But wealth, success, personal transformation, they never show up in the comfort zone. They visit the edge. They live in challenge. They grow in adversity. And every time you choose discipline over ease, every time you walk away from what's comfortable but limiting, you are upgrading your life. Not just externally, but internally. Here's what happens when you raise your standard. Your comfort zone begins to shrink, and your capacity begins to grow. Suddenly, what used to be hard becomes your new normal. Waking up early, staying focused, saying no to distractions, investing instead of spending, choosing water over soda, studying while others are watching TV. All of it becomes part of who you are. Why? Because your standard demanded it. And your life always rises or falls to the level of that standard. So the question becomes, are you willing to pay the price of discomfort today so you can afford the luxury of freedom tomorrow? Are you willing to say, this is beneath me now, not because I'm better than others, but because I'm becoming better than who I was? That's not ego. That's evolution. That's maturity. It's personal leadership. The new version of your life requires a new version of you. But that version can't be built with the tools of comfort. It's built in the tension, the sweat, the sacrifice. And it starts the moment you look comfort in the eye and say, you're not my standard anymore. New standards lead to a new life. This isn't just about wealth or financial success. It's about the person you become in the process of pursuing those things. It's about developing into someone capable of sustaining and maintaining success, someone who can handle the rewards that come with living at a higher level. Change your standards, and you're not just changing what you get. You're changing who you are. When you decide to raise your standards, you're fundamentally altering the blueprint of your future. You're deciding that the version of yourself that got you here is no longer enough. You're telling the universe that you're ready to evolve, to grow, to become something more. And that shift doesn't just affect the big moments, it affects everything. Your thoughts, your actions, your relationships, your habits. Every little decision becomes a reflection of the new standard you've set for yourself. For things to change, you have to change. That's the essence of personal growth. It's not the world that needs to change to make your dreams come true. It's you. It's your level of thinking, your level of effort, your level of commitment to becoming the best version of yourself. Most people want the rewards of success without the effort of transformation. They want wealth without becoming wealthy in mind and spirit. They want the results, but aren't willing to change who they are to get them. But wealth, like success, doesn't arrive by accident. It comes to those who build the internal foundation first. It comes to those who raise their standards in every area of life, whether it's the standard you set for your work ethic, the way you think about money, the people you allow into your life, or the goals you pursue. Each of these is a reflection of who you're becoming. When you elevate your standards, the world around you must change to match. If you keep accepting the same old standards, your life will stay on the same old path. It's like driving a car but never changing the route. But when you change the standards, you begin to take a different route. A route that leads to success, to freedom, to fulfillment. And every time you make a decision based on your new elevated standards, you're reinforcing that path. You're actively designing your future. So what happens when you raise your standards? First, you stop tolerating mediocrity in any form. No longer will you accept laziness, lack of discipline, or underperformance. Your level of commitment goes up. Your actions become deliberate, intentional, and focused on long-term success. You begin to ask yourself, what would the best version of me do right now? And you act on it, whether it's in your work, your health, or your relationships. Your new standard is not about doing more for the sake of doing more. It's about doing what matters, doing it with excellence, and doing it consistently. You'll stop blaming external circumstances and start taking full responsibility for your own results. When you elevate your standards, you no longer wait for the perfect conditions to act, you simply act, knowing that your standards demand it. This process takes time. It's a continual upward climb. But with each new level you reach, you see a bigger picture unfold. You begin to notice that the old habits, the old relationships, and the old ways of thinking don't serve you anymore. They fall away naturally as you grow into your new identity, the identity of someone who consistently raises their standards and pursues greatness relentlessly. Remember, your standards are the foundation of everything you will ever achieve. Your actions, your results, and your future depend on them. If you want a new life, it begins with a new set of standards. Raise them, and your life will follow suit.